My name is Ansel, 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, our family cabin in Wisconsin has been the centerpiece of our holiday traditions. So when my parents called last month with those unexpected words, "Traditions are for parents," you can skip this year, something felt off. Their voices carried a strange tone I couldn't quite place. That evening, as I stared at my phone, a bold idea took shape. Little did they know, their casual dismissal would spark a decision that would change everything. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our growing family of storytellers. Trust me, you'll want to see how this unfolds. The Lambert family cabin sits, nestled among towering pines on the shores of Lake Harmony, a quaint wooden structure my grandfather built with his own hands in the 60s. Every December since before I was born, my family has made the 4-hour drive from Chicago to spend 2 weeks surrounded by snow forest and the comforting isolation that only rural Wisconsin can provide. My earliest memories are painted with the warm glow of the stone fireplace, the scent of my mother's cinnamon cookies wafting through the cabin's wooden beams. I remember my father teaching me to ice fish when I was 6, his patient hands guiding mine as we drilled through the frozen lake surface. The pride in his eyes when I caught my first perch has stayed with me for decades. Each year followed a comfortable rhythm. We would arrive on December 20th, unpack the car while complaining about the cold, then spend the first evening decorating the cabin. My mother insisted on handmade ornaments only, a tradition she inherited from her mother. My sister Sarah and I would compete to create the most impressive paper snowflakes to hang from the ceiling beams. I usually won, though she would never admit it. The next morning always began with my father's legendary sourdough pancakes, a recipe he guarded more closely than his bank account details. The scent would wake us before the sun rose, pulling us from warm beds into the chilly morning air. We'd spend days sledding down the hill behind the cabin, building elaborate snow forts, and venturing into town for the annual winter festival. Evenings were for board games, serious competitive affairs that occasionally ended in shouting matches and dramatic accusations of cheating. My mother, surprisingly cutthroat during Monopoly, would often emerge victorious, while the rest of us nursed our wounded pride with hot chocolate spiked with peppermint schnapps, once Sarah and I were old enough, of course. Christmas Eve had its own sacred rituals. We would bundle up after sunset and trek through the woods to a small clearing where we could see the stars. My father would tell the same story every year about how his father had brought him to that exact spot as a child. We would stand in silence for exactly 1 minute, our breath forming clouds in the frigid air before making our way back to the warmth of the cabin. These traditions meant everything to me. They were the constants in an otherwise changing world. When I went through my difficult teenage years rebelling against everything my parents stood for, the cabin remained the one place where I could drop my angsty facade and just be the kid who loved making snow angels and eating too many cookies. As we grew older, the dynamics shifted. Sarah brought home her college boyfriend Brian during my senior year of university. I remember disliking him immediately, his loud laugh, his insistence on improving our traditions with his own family's customs. Yet he became a permanent fixture, marrying Sarah just 2 years later. I noticed subtle changes in my parents over the past 5 years. My father, once the enthusiastic instigator of snowball fights, began preferring to stay indoors with a book. My mother's cookie batches grew smaller. Her collection of Christmas sweaters remained unworn in her suitcase. They still participated, but something was different. The spark had dimmed. Last year marked the first major disruption. I had planned to bring my girlfriend Natalie, but Sarah called me directly to express concerns. She claimed Natalie would disrupt the family dynamic, that the cabin was too small for another person. The conversation grew heated when I pointed out that her husband had been coming for years. The tension spilled over into our holiday, creating an undercurrent of resentment that never fully dissipated. Despite these complications, I never once considered not going. The cabin was my anchor, the traditions, my heritage. They connected me to my grandparents, whom I barely remembered, and provided a sense of continuity that grounded my otherwise chaotic life as a freelance photographer. I believed, perhaps naively, that the tradition was as sacred to my family as it was to me. Then came the phone call that would unravel everything I thought I knew about our family traditions. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in November when my phone lit up with my mother's number. I answered with my usual enthusiasm, expecting our weekly catch-up about neighborhood gossip and my father's latest woodworking project. "Ansel, sweetheart." My mother began, her voice carrying an unusual hesitancy. "Your father and I have been talking about the holiday plans this year." Something in her tone immediately set off alarm bells. I gripped my phone tighter, bracing myself. "We were thinking that, well, traditions are really more for parents. You know, you're a grown man now with your own life. You can skip this year if you want." The words hit me like a physical blow. Skip the cabin. Skip our family tradition. In 32 years, this had never been presented as an option. "What do you mean, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My father's voice suddenly came on the line. They must have been on speakerphone. "Son, what your mother means is that we know you're busy with your photography career. We wouldn't want you to feel obligated to come if you have other opportunities." His explanation rang hollow. My father knew that I specifically blocked off December for family time every year. I had turned down lucrative winter wedding shoots and commercial campaigns because of our tradition. "Is something wrong with the cabin?" I probed. "Water damage, electrical issues?" No, nothing like that," my mother rushed to assure me. "The cabin is fine. We just thought, well, you might want a break from tradition this year." There was an awkward pause before my father added, "Think of it as our gift to you. Freedom from obligation." The conversation continued with strained pleasantries, but my mind was racing. This wasn't normal. My parents had always been the enforcers of tradition, not its dismantlers. After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence, replaying the conversation in my head. Their voices had carried strange undercurrents. My mother's slight pitch increase, that always signaled she was hiding something, my father's gruff throat clearing, that emerged when he felt uncomfortable. That night sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, parsing their words for hidden meanings. By morning, suspicion had taken root. I grabbed my laptop and began investigating, starting with Sarah's social media accounts. There it was posted. Just 3 hours after my parents' call, a photo of packed suitcases with the caption, "Getting ready for our annual family tradition. Wisconsin cabin, here we come. Family time tradition, holiday magic." My stomach clenched. They were still going. They were continuing the tradition without me. Further scrolling revealed older conversations between Sarah and our cousin Angela in the comments section. Angela had written, "Can't wait to finally experience the famous cabin Christmas," with Sarah responding, "It's going to be amazing having you with us this year." Angela, my cousin from my mother's side, who had always been closer to Sarah than to me. We had a complicated history dating back to childhood rivalries and a particularly nasty incident involving her breaking my camera when I was 15. We maintained civil but distant relations at family gatherings. I called my best friend Michael, nearly shouting as soon as he answered. "They're replacing me with Angela," I exclaimed, without preamble. "Whoa, slow down." Michael responded, his calm voice, a contrast to my agitation. "What are you talking about?" I explained the situation, my words tumbling out in a rush of hurt and indignation. "So let me get this straight," Michael summarized after listening patiently. "Your parents told you to skip the family tradition, but they're still going with your sister, and now your cousin too." "Exactly. They didn't want me there, so they just uninvited me. After 32 years? Michael was quiet for a moment before responding thoughtfully. "That's pretty cold, man. But look at it this way. If they don't want you there, why would you want to go?" "Because it's tradition." "It's our thing," I protested. "Is it, though? If they can decide you're not part of it anymore, was it ever really yours?" His words, though harsh, struck a chord. What was a family tradition if family members could be casually excluded? "So what do?" I asked. Deflated. "If I were you," Michael said slowly, "I'd make new plans. Amazing plans. Show them that if they don't value your presence, you can find better ways to spend your holiday. If they don't want you at their party, throw a better one." The idea took root immediately. If my family didn't want me at the cabin, I wouldn't sit at home feeling sorry for myself. I would do something spectacular. Something that would make them question their decision to exclude me. "You know what? You're right," I said. a new determination filling my voice. They think I'll just stay home and mope. I'm going to have the best holiday of my life. As I hung up, my mind was already racing with possibilities. This wasn't just about spite, though I couldn't deny that played a part. It was about reclaiming my holiday on my own terms. If family traditions could be so easily discarded, perhaps it was time to create traditions of my own. With newfound determination, I opened my laptop and began researching. If I was going to create an alternative holiday experience, it needed to be spectacular, something that would make the Wisconsin cabin look like a sad, drafty shack in comparison. At first, I considered options that mirrored our traditional activities. Maybe a ski resort in Colorado, a mountain cabin in Montana. But these felt too similar, too close to what I was being excluded from. I needed something completely different, a clean break from pine trees and snow. The idea came to me during my third cup of coffee warmth, sunshine, the complete opposite of Wisconsin in December. I typed best winter beach destinations into the search bar and began scrolling through images of crystal clear waters and white sand beaches. An advertisement appeared in my sidebar. Last-minute opening at Azure Dreams Resort and Spa, private island experience, 40% off for solo travelers. I clicked without hesitation. The website loaded to reveal images that looked photoshopped in their perfection. Azure Dreams was a boutique resort on a small private island in the Bahamas. Each guest stayed in individual beachfront bungalows with private plunge pools. The resort offered everything from scuba diving to gourmet cooking classes, spa treatments, to guided nature hikes. I scrolled to the prices and winced. Even with the discount, this was significantly more expensive than my typical holiday budget. The practical voice in my head reminded me that I had been saving for a new professional camera lens. This is ridiculous, I muttered to myself. I can't blow my savings on a spite vacation. But then my phone pinged with a notification. Sarah had posted another cabin preparation photo, this time featuring Angela helping to pack the car. The caption read, "So excited to continue our family traditions with the people who matter most." That settled it. I entered my credit card information with vindictive satisfaction, booking the 7-day package at Azure Dreams. The confirmation email arrived moments later along with a personalized message from the resort manager welcoming me to their family. Next came flights. I found a direct option from Chicago to Nassau, followed by a private resort boat transfer to the island. The departure date aligned perfectly with when I would normally be driving to Wisconsin. There was something poetic about flying south while my family drove north. As I completed the final booking, a complex mixture of emotions washed over me. Excitement about the upcoming adventure mingled with lingering hurt and a twinge of guilt. Was I being petty? Probably. Did they deserve it? Absolutely. The next few days passed in a flurry of preparation. I purchased new swimwear, sunscreen, and resort-appropriate clothing. I renewed my passport, which had been gathering dust since a photography assignment in Montreal 2 years prior. I arranged for my neighbor to water my plants and collected my mail. Throughout these preparations, I maintained normal communication with my parents, never mentioning my alternative plans. They called twice more, each conversation filled with awkward pauses and superficial questions about my work. Neither of them mentioned the cabin directly, though my mother did ask if I had made any special plans for the holidays, with a strange emphasis that confirmed my suspicions. "Nothing special," I replied, the lie giving me a small thrill. "Just taking some time for myself." The night before my departure, I carefully packed my suitcase and my camera equipment. Photography was both my profession and passion, and I intended to capture every moment of this unexpected journey. As I selected lenses and memory cards, I imagined the photos I would post, subtle evidence of my spectacular solo adventure. I received a final text from my father that evening. "Just checking in. Your mother wanted to make sure you're doing okay with the change of plans this year." I stared at the message for several minutes before replying, "I'll be fine, Dad. Don't worry about me. I can take care of myself." His response came quickly. "Never doubted that, son. Have a good holiday." As I set my alarm and climbed into bed, a wave of sadness washed over me. Tomorrow would be the first time in my adult life that I wouldn't be making the familiar drive to Lake Harmony. Despite my excitement about Azure Dreams, there was an undeniable emptiness in breaking such a long-standing tradition. It wasn't my choice. I reminded myself as I drifted off to sleep. They pushed me out. The morning arrived with a brilliant winter sunrise, the kind that turns Chicago's skyline into a silhouette of gold and pink. I took it as a good omen as I loaded my luggage into a rideshare to the airport. Just before getting in the car, I took a selfie with my packed bags and the sunrise behind me. I saved it to post later, the first breadcrumb in the trail I would leave for my family to follow. As the car pulled away from my apartment building, I felt a strange mixture of liberation and loss. Whatever happened next this holiday would certainly be unlike any other in my life. The flight to Nassau lasted just over 3 hours, but it transported me to another world entirely. As we descended through cotton candy clouds, the landscape below transformed from the gray-brown winter palette of the Midwest to a mosaic of turquoise waters and emerald islands. Nassau's airport bustled with tourists in flowery shirts and wide-brimmed hats, a sharp contrast to the bundled-up travelers I'd left behind in Chicago. After collecting my luggage, I followed the signs to a small desk marked Azure Dreams Resort. A young woman with a brilliant smile greeted me. "Mr. Lambert, welcome to the Bahamas. I'm Diane, your resort liaison. The boat to Azure Island leaves in 20 minutes. Can I offer you a complimentary rum punch while we wait?" The drink was sweet and potent, instantly melting away the last vestiges of winter from my bones. I sipped it while Diane chatted about the resort and the perfect weather forecast for the coming week. The boat ride to the island took 40 minutes, the speedboat cutting through waves, while the captain pointed out landmarks and shared local folklore. As we approached Azure Island, I caught my first glimpse of the resort, a collection of elegant thatched roof bungalows lining a perfect crescent beach. "We've given you one of our premium beachfront units," the captain mentioned as we neared the private dock. "Number 17. It's one of my favorites. The sunset view is unbeatable." A welcoming committee awaited us at the dock, 3 staff members bearing fresh towels, more tropical drinks, and warm smiles. The resort manager, a tall woman named Jessica with sun-bleached hair and laugh lines around her eyes, stepped forward to greet me personally. "Ansel, we're delighted you chose to spend your holiday with us," she said, shaking my hand warmly. "Especially since I understand this is a departure from your usual family tradition." I blinked in surprise. "How did you know that?" She laughed. "You mentioned it in your booking notes. Something about needing a complete change from family cabin traditions. We take those comments seriously here. We want to make sure your first solo holiday is memorable for all the right reasons." A golf cart transported me and my luggage to Bungalow 17. The path wound through lush tropical gardens, past a magnificent swimming pool, and alongside an open-air restaurant where guests dined with their feet in the sand. The bungalow exceeded every expectation, spacious and airy with sliding glass doors opening directly onto the beach. A 4-poster bed draped in white mosquito netting faced the ocean. The bathroom featured an indoor divided by outdoor shower with walls made of natural stone. On the private deck, a plunge pool overlooked the Caribbean Sea. "This island. Incredible," I murmured, turning to Jessica, who had accompanied me to ensure everything was satisfactory. "The minibar is complimentary and restocked daily," she explained, opening a discreet bamboo cabinet to reveal an array of drinks and snacks. "Your welcome package includes a schedule of activities, though nothing is mandatory. Some guests never leave their bungalows, while others participate in everything we offer." After she left, I stood on the deck, watching the gentle waves lap at the shore, just 50 feet away. The reality of my situation slowly sank in. I was thousands of miles from the snow-covered cabin where my family was gathering without me. Yet, instead of the melancholy I had anticipated, I felt a surprising lightness. I unpacked, quickly changed into swim shorts, and headed straight for the ocean. The water was warm and clear, fish darting around my feet as I waded deeper. I floated on my back, staring up at the cloudless sky, and felt the tight knot of resentment in my chest begin to loosen. That evening, I joined other guests for a welcome dinner on the beach. Tables had been set up on the sand, illuminated by tiki torches and string lights. A steel drum band played softly as servers circulated with trays of fresh seafood and tropical cocktails. I found myself seated with 2 other solo travelers, Joshua, a divorced investment banker from Seattle, and Eliza, a novelist from Boston, celebrating the completion of her latest manuscript. Both had their own reasons for seeking solitude during the holidays. My ex-wife got the cabin in Montana, Joshua explained between bites of grilled mahi-mahi. First Christmas in 8 years I haven't been there. Feels strange, but not entirely in a bad way. Eliza nodded. My family does this enormous gathering in Vermont. 30-plus relatives crammed into my grandmother's house. After a year of writing in isolation, I just couldn't face the chaos. Needed to decompress somewhere peaceful. What about you? Joshua asked, turning to me. What brings you to paradise, instead of whatever family ritual you'd normally be enduring? I hesitated before answering honestly. I was uninvited from our family tradition this year. They're all at our cabin in Wisconsin right now, except me. Their expressions turned sympathetic, but I quickly added, It's okay, though. Maybe this is exactly what I needed without realizing it. To family disappointments, Joshua raised his glass in a toast, and finding better alternatives. We clinked glasses as the band struck up a livelier tune. By the time dinner ended, I had signed up for a scuba diving excursion with Joshua the next morning and promised to read an advance copy of Eliza's novel by the pool. Back in my bungalow, I stood on the deck, listening to the waves. On impulse, I took out my phone and captured a perfect sunset photo, the kind that screams paradise found. After a moment's hesitation, I posted it to Instagram with a simple caption, Sometimes the best traditions are the ones you create for yourself. New beginnings, island life. I set my phone aside without waiting for responses, slipped between the cool sheets of my king-sized bed, and fell asleep to the sound of gentle waves, a far cry from the howling Wisconsin winds that usually accompanied my December nights. Morning arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through the windows I had intentionally left uncurtained. For a moment I was disoriented. No creaking cabin floors. No smell of sourdough pancakes. No sounds of my sister arguing with her husband about shower schedules. Instead, birds called from nearby palm trees and the ocean whispered its constant rhythm. I stretched luxuriously in bed, realizing I had slept better than I had in months. The weight of expectation, of performing familiar roles in familiar settings, had lifted. As I prepared for my diving excursion, I checked my phone. My innocuous sunset photo had unleashed a storm. 3 missed calls from my mother. 5 text messages from Sarah, ranging from confused to accusatory. A single message from my father. Where are you? I smiled and put the phone back down without responding. Let them wonder, let them worry. For once I wasn't following the script they had written for our family story. The guilt I had anticipated feeling was noticeably absent. In its place was something unexpected, a sense of liberation, of reclaiming my holiday on my own terms. If my family could decide I wasn't essential to their tradition, then perhaps it was time to discover who I could be outside of those carefully constructed family narratives. I grabbed my camera, adjusted my new sun hat, and stepped out into the brilliant island morning, ready to document the first day of what felt increasingly like a new chapter in my life. By mid-afternoon, following an exhilarating scuba diving session where I'd photographed a sea turtle the size of a coffee table, my phone had become a battlefield of notifications. I scrolled through them while lounging by the pool, sipping a coconut water and enjoying the tropical breeze. The first message from Sarah had arrived just 30 minutes after I posted the sunset photo. Ansel, where are you? That doesn't look like Chicago. This was followed an hour later by, Seriously, what's going on? Mom and Dad said you weren't coming to the cabin because you had work. And then more aggressively, Are you seriously on vacation somewhere? Tropical, instead of being with family? What the hell, Ansel? My mother's voicemails were variations on a theme of concern, masquerading as casual interest, sweetheart just checking in. That looks like a lovely sunset. Give me a call when you can. Each message carried an increasingly strained tone of forced nonchalance. My father, characteristically more direct, had sent his single question mark, followed by a second text hours later. Your mother is worried. At least tell us where you are. I decided to respond with calculated brevity. To my sister, I wrote, Just enjoying my holiday as suggested. Hope Wisconsin is nice. To my parents, a slightly more detailed, I'm safe and happy at a resort in the Bahamas. Signal spotty. Will call when I can. Then I put my phone on airplane mode and returned to my novel, determined to enjoy the rest of my afternoon in peace. That evening, during a beachfront yoga session at sunset, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. Part of me felt a twinge of regret at causing my mother worry. Another part, the wounded part that had been so casually discarded from family tradition, felt vindicated by their concern. If I mattered so much, why had they excluded me in the first place? After dinner, I finally turned my phone back on. The response was immediate, a FaceTime call from my mother. I hesitated before answering, stepping onto my private deck, where the sound of waves would provide background ambiance to what would surely be an uncomfortable conversation. My mother's face appeared the cabin's familiar wooden walls behind her. Her expression cycled rapidly, from relief to confusion to something that looked surprisingly like guilt. Ansel, thank goodness. We've been so worried. No need to worry, Mom. Just taking your advice about skipping tradition this year. Her eyes darted away from the camera. Well, yes, but we didn't expect that island. Where exactly are you? Azure Dreams Resort. It's a private island in the Bahamas. Very exclusive, very peaceful. I turned the camera to show the moonlit ocean before returning to my face. How's the cabin? How's Angela? Enjoying her first Lambert family Christmas. The mention of Angela's name caused my mother to flinch visibly. In the background, I heard my father ask, "Is that Ansel?" before his face appeared beside my mother's? Son, he began, his tone serious. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. As there, I kept my voice light. You told me traditions were for parents and I could skip this year. I'm just following instructions. My mother's face crumpled slightly. We didn't mean for you to go off alone for Christmas. We thought you might want a break from the drive from the same old routines. The routines I've participated in for 32 years. The traditions that supposedly defined our family. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Your sister thought it might be nice to invite Angela this year. The cabin only has 3 bedrooms, and with Brian and Angela both coming. And there it was, the truth finally emerging. They hadn't wanted to exclude me. They had simply prioritized others over me. Somehow that hurt even more than my original assumption. So, you decided I was the expendable one, I concluded, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. The one who could be asked to stay home to make room for Angela. It wasn't like that. My mother protested weakly. Then what was it like, Mom? Please explain. My father, never comfortable with emotional confrontations, attempted to change the subject. That resort looks nice. Must be expensive. It is, I confirmed. Worth every penny to discover where I actually stand in the family hierarchy. The conversation deteriorated from there. My sister joined, defensive and angry, accusing me of dramatics and attention-seeking. Angela hovered awkwardly in the background, clearly uncomfortable at being the catalyst for family discord. When I finally ended the call, 30 minutes later, I felt emotionally drained, but strangely empowered. The truth was out. The dynamics that had been simmering beneath the surface of our family interactions for years had finally boiled over. I posted another photo before going to bed, this one of me raising a glass of champagne on my private deck, the moonlit ocean behind me. The caption read, "To new traditions and honest relationships, best decision ever." In the morning, I discovered that Sarah had posted her own cabin photo in apparent retaliation. It showed the familiar living room with Angela, prominently featured, all of them wearing the matching flannel pajamas that had been our Christmas Eve tradition. The forced smiles told their own story. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of sadness for what was lost and excitement for what I was discovering. The cabin and its traditions had been a cornerstone of my identity for so long that its absence left a void, but that void was rapidly filling with new experiences and insights. Joshua noticed my preoccupation during breakfast and asked if everything was okay. I found myself sharing the whole story. The exclusion, the revelation, the confrontation. Families, he said with a knowing shake of his head. They say they want you to be happy, but what they really want is for you to play your assigned role. Exactly, I agreed, and apparently my role was expendable this year. So, what are you going to do about it? The question caught me off guard. Do I'm already doing it? I'm here, instead of there. Joshua smiled. No, I mean after this. When the holiday is over, and real life resumes, do you go back to the same dynamic, or has something fundamentally changed? I didn't have an answer yet, but the question followed me throughout the day, as I participated in a cooking class learning to prepare Bahamian conch fritters and rum cake. What would happen when paradise ended, and I returned to the reality of family relationships that now felt irrevocably altered? That evening, as I walked along the beach collecting shells, my phone rang. It was my father calling alone this time. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. We handled this badly. His directness surprised me. My father had never been one for emotional conversations or admissions of wrongdoing. Yes, I agreed. You did. Your mother is upset. Sarah is angry. Angela feels terrible. And how do you feel, Dad? The question hung between us for a long moment before he answered. Ashamed. We should have been honest from the start. We should have found a solution that included everyone. His candor disarmed my rehearsed responses. The anger I had been nurturing began to dissipate, not entirely, but enough to allow for conversation rather than confrontation. I appreciate that, I said finally. It means a lot to hear you say it. Are you really okay there? By yourself for Christmas. I looked around at the paradise that surrounded me, at the new friends I had made, at the experiences I would never have had if I'd been at the cabin. I'm more than okay, Dad. I'm discovering that there might be more than one way to celebrate a holiday. More than one way to be happy. After we hung up, I realized something important had shifted both within me and within our family dynamic. My exile, initially painful and unwanted, had forced a kind of honesty that might otherwise have taken years to achieve. I posted one more photo that night, not of the resort or the beach or anything designed to provoke envy, but of a simple seashell in the palm of my hand. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to leave familiar shores to find new treasures. Gratitude." My sister was the first to like it. The next morning dawned with a clarity that seemed to mirror my emotional state. For the first time since arriving at the resort, I rose before the sun, grabbing my camera and a light jacket to protect against the pre-dawn chill. The beach was deserted as I walked along the shoreline, watching the eastern sky transform from inky black to deep purple, then lavender pink, and finally a brilliant gold as the sun breached the horizon. I captured dozens of photos, losing myself in the interplay of light and water. "You're up early," a voice commented behind me. I turned to find a woman about my age, athletic and tanned, carrying what looked like professional diving equipment. The photographer in me couldn't resist this light, I explained, gesturing toward the sunrise. She smiled, extending her hand. "Amelia, I run the water sports program here." "Ansel, guest escaping family drama." Her laugh was warm and genuine. "Aren't we all? That's the unofficial resort motto, Azure Dreams, where family drama can't find you." We fell into easy conversation as she prepared for the morning's first diving excursion. Amelia, I learned, had abandoned a promising career in marine biology research to become a diving instructor 5 years ago. "Academia was killing my love for the ocean," she explained as she checked air tanks. "Too much paperwork, too many grant applications, not enough actual time in the water. Now I get paid to introduce people to the world I love. Best decision I ever made." "Any regrets?" I asked, genuinely curious about her radical life change. She considered the question seriously. "I miss the intellectual challenge sometimes. And my parents still introduce me as their daughter who gave up a PhD to teach tourists how to breathe underwater." She mimicked an obviously disapproving tone, but regrets no. Life's too short to live it according to someone else's blueprint. Her words resonated deeply. Hadn't I been following my family's blueprint for holiday celebrations without question for decades? "Want to join today's advanced dive?" she offered. "We're exploring a shipwreck about a mile offshore. Incredible photography opportunities." I accepted, immediately rushing back to my bungalow for my underwater camera housing. The dive exceeded all expectations. The shipwreck, a small cargo vessel that had sunk in the 1970s, teemed with marine life. Schools of vibrant fish circled the encrusted hull. Moray eels peered from dark recesses, and at one point, a small reef shark glided majestically past our group. Throughout the dive, Amelia proved to be an exceptional guide, pointing out easily missed details and ensuring everyone's safety while allowing space for exploration. I captured hundreds of images, already mentally editing the best ones for my professional portfolio. Over the next 3 days, I found myself gravitating toward activities led by Amelia, a sunrise kayak expedition through nearby mangroves, an afternoon snorkeling session in a protected cove known for its sea turtle population, and a 4-sunset sailing trip where dolphins raced alongside our catamaran. Each activity revealed new aspects of the island and new facets of my guide's personality. Amelia was knowledgeable, without being pedantic, passionate about conservation, without preaching, and possessed a quiet confidence I found increasingly attractive. On my 5th evening at the resort, we found ourselves alone on the beach after the other guests had retired for the night. A bonfire crackled between us as we sat on driftwood logs, sharing a bottle of local rum and watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. "So," Amelia said after a comfortable silence, "you mentioned escaping family drama. Care to elaborate? Or is that strictly off-limits conversation?" I surprised myself by wanting to tell her everything. The words poured out. The tradition, the exclusion, the confrontation, and the tentative reconciliation that had begun with my father's call. The strangest part, I concluded, is that I'm actually grateful it happened. If they hadn't pushed me out, I'd never have discovered all this. I gestured broadly at our surroundings. "I'd never have met you." The firelight accentuated her smile. "Their loss, my gain." "What about you?" I asked. "You mentioned your parents don't approve of your career choice. How do you handle family expectations?" Amelia poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the night sky. "I built what I call a chosen family. The people here, other diving instructors, conservation volunteers, they became my support system. People who value me for who I am, not who they expected me to become." That sounds liberating. Island. Don't get me wrong, I love my biological family, but I don't let them define me anymore. Her words struck a chord. How much of my identity had been shaped by my role in the Lambert family traditions? Who was Ansel? Outside of those carefully curated holiday rituals. We talked until the fire burned down to embers, sharing stories of family pressures, personal discoveries, and the complex journey to authentic selfhood. When we finally walked back toward the resort, Amelia impulsively took my hand. "There's a local festival in the village tomorrow night," she said. "Not on the official resort schedule, just locals celebrating the holiday their way. Want to go? It might give you ideas for your new traditions." The next day, my phone pinged with messages from Wisconsin. Photos of the familiar cabin activities. My father ice fishing, my mother arranging pine boughs on the mantel, Sarah and Angela building a snowman. They were clearly attempts at inclusion from a distance. Olive branches extended across the miles. I responded with my own photos. Not the carefully curated social media posts designed to provoke envy, but genuine moments of discovery. A close-up of a starfish Amelia had gently lifted for me to photograph a local child teaching me to weave palm fronds at the resort's cultural demonstration. The spectacular underwater world I was exploring daily. My mother responded immediately. "You look happy, sweetheart. Happier than you've looked in our cabin photos for years." Her observation stopped me cold. Was she right? Had I been going through the motions of enjoyment, playing my assigned role in our family tradition, while something essential within me remained unfulfilled? That evening, Amelia borrowed a resort jeep and drove me to the local village celebration. Unlike the polished luxury of Azure Dreams, this was authentic Bahamian culture. Riotous music, homemade food, served from makeshift stands, children racing through the village square, trailing ribbons, and elders holding court from chairs, positioned in prime viewing locations. We danced to a Junkanoo band, ate conch fritters and cassava bread, and drank sweet rum cocktails served in hollowed-out pineapples. Amelia introduced me to what seemed like the entire village, proudly explaining that many of the younger residents had participated in her marine conservation education programs. "This is my chosen family," she whispered, as we watched an impromptu dance performance by a group of teenagers. "The people who accept me exactly as I am." I understood then what she meant. Throughout the evening, no one had asked about my career aspirations, commented on my relationship status, or compared me to any sibling. I was simply Ansel, Amelia's friend from America, welcomed without expectation or judgment. Later, walking along the beach, back to the resort, Amelia asked, "What will you do when you go home? Will things go back to normal with your family?" The question had been circling my mind for days. "I don't think they can," I answered honestly. "Something fundamental has changed, not just in how they see me, but in how I see myself." "And how do you see yourself now?" I considered the question carefully. As someone who can create his own traditions, someone who doesn't need to fit into predefined family roles to be complete. Amelia stopped walking, turning to face me. The moonlight illuminated her features as she studied my face. "That's a powerful realization." "It is," I agreed, "and I have you to thank for helping me see it." What happened next seemed as natural as the waves lapping at the shore. She leaned forward. I bent down slightly, and our lips met in a kiss that tasted of rum and possibility. When we separated, both smiling, Amelia said softly, "Just to be clear, I'm not normally in the habit of kissing resort guests." "And I'm not normally in the habit of being uninvited from family traditions," I replied. "But I'm starting to think some habits are worth breaking." That night, I posted one last photo to my family group chat, not of Amelia and me that felt too new and precious to share, but of the village celebration vibrant with authentic joy. The caption read, "Finding new ways to celebrate. New traditions in the making." My father responded first. "Proud of you, son." 3 simple words that somehow meant everything. My final day at Azure Dreams arrived with the bittersweet quality that marks the end of all significant journeys. I rose early to watch one last island sunrise, savoring the pink-gold light that transformed ordinary waves into momentary works of art. The resort had arranged a farewell dinner for departing guests on the beach that evening. Tables draped in white linen formed a semicircle on the sand, tiki torches casting a warm glow as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The chef had prepared a feast showcasing the best of Bahamian cuisine: fresh grouper, spiny lobster, pigeon peas and rice, and tropical fruits, arranged in elaborate displays. Joshua raised his glass in a toast as our small group of newfound friends gathered around the table, to unexpected holidays and the strangers who became companions along the way. Eliza added, "And to family dramas that push us toward better adventures." We clinked glasses as the steel drum band began to play the familiar melody of Auld Lang Syne reimagined with a Caribbean rhythm. The irony wasn't lost on me. A song about remembering old acquaintances played among new friends who had in just 1 week impacted my life profoundly. After dinner, as guests mingled and danced on the beach, Amelia appeared at my side. She had exchanged her usual work attire of rash guard and board shorts for a simple blue dress that complemented her sun-kissed skin. "Walk with me," she asked, extending her hand. We strolled along the shoreline, past the boundaries of the resort's property, to a secluded cove where the only illumination came from the moon and stars above. The sound of the party faded, replaced by the gentle rhythm of waves. "I have something for you," Amelia said, reaching into a small pocket in her dress. She withdrew a bracelet made of polished seashells, small pieces of sea glass, and what appeared to be carved driftwood. "I made this," she explained, slightly embarrassed. "It's a tradition among the local divers here. We create something from elements the ocean provides, then give it to someone who has touched our lives." She fastened it around my wrist, the shells cool against my skin. In the moonlight, I could make out words carved into the central piece of driftwood. "Create your own traditions." Amelia, words failed me. The simple gift represented something I was only beginning to understand: that traditions weren't static relics to be preserved unchanged, but living practices that could evolve, die, and be born anew. "Don't go all sentimental on me now," she teased, though. Her own eyes glistened. "It's just a bunch of shells on a string." We both knew it was much more. Later that night, as I packed my suitcase for the morning departure, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen. "Dad, everything okay?" "Everything's fine, son. Just wanted to catch you before you head back to Chicago tomorrow." There was something different in his voice. an openness that had been absent in our recent interactions. "The cabin feels different without you here," he continued. "Not right somehow." Well, I was uninvited. I reminded him, though, without the bitterness that would have colored the statement a week ago. "I know, and I'm sorry. We all are." He paused, and I could hear him moving, probably stepping outside the cabin for privacy. "Your mother and I have been talking. What happened this year?" It made us realize we've been clinging to traditions without considering why or if they still serve their purpose. "What do you mean?" "The cabin was supposed to bring us together, not drive us apart. Somewhere along the way, the tradition became more important than the people it was meant to connect." His insight surprised me. My father had always been the guardian of family traditions, insisting on their importance, even as their meaning seemed to fade. "Next year," he continued, "we thought maybe we could try something different. All of us together, somewhere new." "Like where?" I asked, intrigued by this unexpected proposal. "Well, that resort of yours looks pretty special. Your mother can't stop talking about those bungalows in your photos. Maybe you could help us plan something there. All of us. You, me, your mother Sarah, and Brian. Even Angela, if you're comfortable with that." The suggestion was so unexpected that I laughed out loud. "You want to replace Wisconsin snow with Bahamian sand? Who are you, and what have you done with my tradition-obsessed father?" He chuckled, the sound warm and familiar. "Let's just say this year's disruption gave me perspective. Traditions should evolve as families do. And maybe it's time ours evolved into something that brings us joy again." After we hung up, I stood on my deck, watching the moonlight dance across the waves. The bracelet Amelia had given me caught the light shells gleaming like tiny stars against my skin. The week had transformed me, in ways I was only beginning to understand. What had begun as a petty act of revenge had become a journey of self-discovery. I had arrived wounded and resentful. I was leaving with new insights, new connections, and a new understanding of what tradition truly meant. My family's annual gathering had been built on the assumption that meaning came from repetition, from doing the same things, in the same place, year after year. But perhaps true meaning came from intention, from consciously choosing to create moments of connection, wherever and however they might occur. The Azure Dreams experience had shown me that I could find joy outside the narrow confines of established traditions. More importantly, it had shown me that I could be the author of my own story, not merely a character in a narrative written by others. As I completed my packing, I carefully wrapped my underwater photographs. This physical evidence of the beauty I had discovered beneath the surface, both literally and metaphorically. These would be the first items I'd unpack in Chicago, visual reminders of what was possible when you ventured beyond familiar shores. In the morning, as the resort boat carried me away from Azure Island, I caught a final glimpse of Amelia standing on the dock. We had exchanged contact information and tentative plans for me to return in the spring for a specialized underwater photography expedition. Whether our connection would develop into something more remained uncertain, but the possibility added another layer of anticipation to my departure. The journey home gave me time to reflect on the lessons of the past week. I had learned that family bonds were both more fragile and more resilient than I had imagined. They could be damaged by careless exclusion, but also strengthened through honest confrontation and reconciliation. I had discovered that identity wasn't fixed, but fluid, constantly shaped by the choices we make and the traditions we either accept or create. The Ansel who had boarded a plane to the Bahamas in angry defiance was not the same Ansel returning with a seashell bracelet and a camera full of underwater wonders. Most importantly, I had realized that traditions held value only insofar as they fostered genuine connection. When they became rigid obligations, rather than meaningful celebrations, it was time to reimagine them or replace them entirely. My phone pinged as we landed in Chicago. A text from Sarah: "Airport pickup still needed, I can be there in 30. This simple offer, the first olive branch extended directly from my sister, suggested that perhaps the family dynamics had shifted during my absence. Her willingness to drive into the city during holiday traffic felt significant. "That would be great," I replied. "Thanks, sis." As I waited at baggage claim, I scrolled through my resort photos one last time before returning to the winter reality of Chicago. Each image captured a moment of discovery, of joy, of unexpected connection. The final photo was one Amelia had taken of me on our last morning, standing on the beach at sunrise, camera in hand, face lifted toward the new day with an expression of peaceful contentment. It was the face of someone who had found something he hadn't known he was seeking. I posted it with a simple caption: "Sometimes the best traditions are the ones we haven't created yet." Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, her familiar car pulling up to the curb outside arrivals. As I loaded my luggage into her trunk, she studied me with curious eyes. "You look different," she observed as we pulled into traffic. "Good different or bad different?" "Just different. More yourself somehow." I smiled, fingering the shell bracelet around my wrist. "I feel more myself." We drove in comfortable silence for several minutes before Sarah spoke again. "Mom and Dad told me about their idea. Bahamas next Christmas. What do you think?" "Honestly," I considered the question carefully. "I think traditions should bring us together, not tear us apart. If a new location helps accomplish that, I'm all for it." She nodded thoughtfully. "It won't be the same." "No," I agreed. "It will be better, because we'll be choosing it together." As the Chicago skyline came into view, snow beginning to fall in gentle flurries around us, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unwanted exclusion that had pushed me toward growth. Sometimes the most painful interruptions in our expected narrative open doors to chapters we would never otherwise have written. The shell bracelet caught the light as I adjusted the heater vent. Create your own traditions, words to live by, not just during holidays, but every day. A reminder that we are not passive participants in our lives, but active creators of our experiences. "So," Sarah said as we neared my apartment, "tell me about this diving instructor you mentioned." "Amelia." "Right. She seemed to feature prominently in your photos." I laughed, recognizing the familiar sibling curiosity. Some things would never change, traditions or not. And that perhaps was the final lesson of my unexpected holiday adventure, knowing which traditions to preserve, which to transform, and which to create anew. The wisdom to distinguish between them might be the greatest gift of all. Have you ever been excluded from a family tradition or gathering? How did you respond? Did you create your own alternative experience like I did, or handle it differently? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of discovery, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about finding your path, and share with someone who might need permission to create their own traditions. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most meaningful traditions are the ones we consciously choose to create. Life is too short for obligations that no longer serve their purpose of bringing joy and connection.